Hello everyone, it is Elsa here and Atlas, and welcome to Tuesday Tea Time. I'm doing this horizontally with my phone this time instead of vertically, and I think it's working, but let me know, anybody, if it's not showing up correctly. So Atlas and I are in the round pen today, and we have an interesting subject to talk about. And that is physical comfort in emotional development. So Atlas here, as a lot of you guys know, he's a rescue. I got him as an 8-year-old stallion from the kill pens, and he was headed for slaughter, probably within a couple of days if I didn't pick him up. He's from the bucking stock at the rodeo. So he worked as a bucking horse, and that's really all I know about his history. When I got Atlas, I've rehabilitated lots of horses. I have had lots of familiarity with earning trust. I didn't think it was a big deal, but this horse has more PTSD type symptoms than any horse I have ever spent time with. So someone wrote in and asked, can you talk a little bit about what you would have done differently when you first got Atlas if you knew what you know now? And that's a huge question. I'm not ready to answer that completely. What would I have done differently when I first got Atlas? There's a lot of things, and that will probably be a Patreon video at some point. I'm still working out exactly what that answer is, but I thought I would talk about it a little bit with Atlas about, what I would have done differently. So the biggest thing that I would have done differently is address his physical comfort. And that's really actually pretty difficult because he has a lot of scars, he has a lot of old injuries, and so he doesn't like to move very much. If Atlas has a choice, and that's my whole thing, I like to give horses choice, he stands like this for 99% of the day. He either stands at his hay, or he stands still in the arena sleeping, or he stands under the tree, but he stands still. So I had this vision when I first got Atlas that I was going to turn him and my Mustang stallion out together, and they would be best friends, and they would play like stallions do, and they would run and they would rear, and there would be all of this healthy development because of their activity, helping them process their emotions. I believe emotions get stuck in the body. The body holds on to stuff that isn't processed emotionally, and it creates physical difficulties. And you have to move enough to process those emotions that get stuck in the body. Well, it turns out Atlas and Ari got along about as well as oil and water. They didn't get along well at all. They're very happy living next to each other. They spend time together, occasionally under supervision, but they don't want to live together. So I found Atlas other friends, my geldings. He really, really loves my gelding Zohari, but Zohari doesn't like to move either. Zohari spends all day sleeping if he can. So I ended up with a horse here that never moves and spends a lot of the day looking like this. And through trial and error, I discovered that the less he moves, the more afraid he is of everything. What's that joke? Horses are afraid of two things: things that move and things that don't move. Atlas is a very strong example of that. So what I discovered, hey buddy, is you can see how as I get closer to him, he gets uncomfortable. Ears go back, he's ready for defense. He's been with me for almost 2 years now. And, I've worked really, really, really hard to earn his trust, and it's been really difficult. There he's coming out of it. That's really good. We do a lot of advance and retreat. I stepped away. He was so relieved. But what I found is that this horse, the more he stands still, the more uncomfortable he gets. And the more uncomfortable he gets, the more afraid he is of everything. And so the biggest thing that I would have done differently with him is figure out how to set him up a life where he got more walking. It's very natural for horses to walk 15, 20 miles a day in the wild when they're looking for food and water. I don't know that they need that much, but they need more than this guy does voluntarily. And this has been really difficult for me because I like horses to have choices and I like them to choose to do things of their own free will. But this guy is not going to choose to move. And I have not been able to find a horse friend that's going to ask him to move. So Lillian says, do you think movement when processing trauma can bring up trauma, making it hard to go through movement to process? Let's see. Yes, absolutely, Lillian. And I think that's one of the problems here is that as Atlas starts to move, he starts to feel things and he starts to process all of those old feelings in his muscles. Look at you coming to say hi. And when he starts to process that old tension, it's really hard. And so he doesn't want to do it. And if I could find him the right friend, if I could put him in the right pasture, if I could turn him into the right situation so he moved, I think everything would be better. But yeah, Lillian, exactly. When I work with choice, it's really hard to help a horse choose things that are uncomfortable. And that's what happens with Atlas, is he's physically uncomfortable when he starts to process all of that old stuff. And so I've been in this struggle where I don't want to make him do anything, okay? It goes against my heart, against what I want. And I go through phases where I say, Atlas, you've got to move. You are almost falling down every time a bird calls out flying over the paddock because you're so afraid. And we get into a pattern and we walk and he feels better and things don't surprise him or scare him. And then when he's better, it's great and I start to slack off and we don't move so much. And then he starts to become afraid again. And so, Lillian says, have you had moments where he chooses to go through and get to the other side? No, he's never chosen to go through and get to the other side. I can push him through the other side, but he does not choose it. And this is a really interesting difficulty with horses who are coming back from trauma, horses that you're rehabilitating, is I don't know that they're going to choose it. Can you find them a horse friend that will push them through it? Or are they going to be reliant on you as a human friend to push them through it? Oriana says, Fred does a lot of functional freeze when I have the halter and lead rope on him. So what I'm seeing is the original trauma events come up for him, hence more need to chew, more stress relief. Yep. That's what we see a lot, is that these old events come up and then they have to process them somehow. So I'm going to turn my video around here so you can see Atlas. And we're going to go for a walk. All right, bud, let's go. And you can see that he's not thrilled with this idea. This is not particularly comfortable for him. And this is why I keep going back and not walking him, okay? Now, he's had some practice at this, so he comes out of it. He's not angry all the time. But it's really hard to tell Atlas he needs to walk. Now, I don't know if you guys can see, he's got a lot of lumps and bumps on his legs, a lot of scarring. Yes, absolutely, Shardy. He has a lot of damage to his legs. So it is not comfortable for him to move. But unfortunately, if he does not move, he is even more uncomfortable than if he does move. So when I ask Atlas to move, I allow him to walk as slowly as he wants to. Okay, there's no hurry. My goal is to get a bunch of miles every day because I find he is more confident when he does more miles. But I need him to feel like it's comfortable to do that, so he can walk as slowly as he wants. Now he's going to do the classic stallion thing here. He's going to poop on the pile that Ari left in the arena earlier. And then he'll feel better and we'll walk some more. My goal is to do this with as little pressure as possible. Let's go, bud. okay? And this is the thing that I would have done differently from the beginning. If I had realized how important movement is, I would have figured out a different living situation. I would have figured out a different friend. I would have committed to it more. But because it's hard for Atlas to move, and you can see that he doesn't want to move, it's really hard for me to make him move. And so I'm struggling with this emotionally, and why this is an interesting tea talk, because I don't have all the answers. But I can tell you that Atlas is a different horse if he travels enough miles every day. Doesn't have to be fast, but if he travels enough miles every day, he is no longer afraid of things. So thank you, Lillian. It's an interesting question. You know, how do we take these horses with severe PTSD and, you know, discomfort in their bodies, and figure out how to set them up to learn and process and not be afraid anymore? So what I found is that, all right, bud, let's go. The more consistent I am with Atlas, as in, you know, here we are, we're walking a circle, we're going the same direction. I'm not changing eyes, I'm not changing my position. The more consistent I am, the happier he is. Hi, Donna. You can hear the big sigh there. But then after a big sigh, okay, when his stress starts to go down, what happens is it rebounds right back up, because a lot of times when horses who have been abused start to relax, it feels quite dangerous, okay? If they relax, will they be able to defend themselves if they need to? It's really difficult. So I don't want Alice to have to defend himself, but I also want him to feel like he can relax. And that means a lot of times when he has a big deep breath like that, we go ahead and stop. Let's go. So why does he yawn? Yes, the yawns are a way to relax. Yawns are interesting because I find that horses often yawn when they're trying to relax, and it doesn't mean that they're successful. It means that they want to relax, or they want to feel better, and sometimes yawning has helped, so they try it. And Lillian says, sometimes I feel the trauma is their protection and they don't like to let it go. And I think you're absolutely right about that, Lillian. That trauma gives them the motivation or the fuel to stay a little tense, to stay a little bit protected, to stay guarded, so that they don't get hurt as much as they have in the past. The body is very intelligent. The body wants to protect itself from being hurt. So it says, in this situation in the past, I felt bad, therefore I don't want to do it, and I need to tense all of my muscles in case I need to run or fight. So, hi Dot. Yes, absolutely, rhythm. The better my rhythm is, the better my rhythm is in my feet, the better my rhythm is in my breathing. All of that makes it easier for Atlas. So Rachel says, apologies for not knowing the backstory, but with his obvious discomfort and mental state of fear, is it fair to keep asking? So, you know, Rachel, that's a really good point. And it's one that I ask myself all the time. You know, is it fair to ask Atlas to do this? Ultimately, I have tried lots of ways of being here with him. And I find when you don't ask him to do this, he becomes so afraid that a crow flying over the paddock makes him fall down. And when that kind of fear can be triggered by such a small event, the alternative of taking a slow walk is a much better alternative, okay? If he's going to be afraid of birds flying, if he doesn't walk, then it's clear to me he should do some walking. I would love it if I could turn him out with a band of mares that, you know, gave him motivation to walk. That would be ideal. He would walk voluntarily following his mares around. But I don't have that option. So I have to experiment with other ways of doing it. So Rachel, you know, he comes with a very complicated backstory that I don't know all of, but we've made a lot of progress, and he's taught me more than any horse I've ever worked with. So I think the things that he can teach me is worth the little bit that I ask him to stretch. And as you see, he's much less angry now than he was before. So as we walk, it tends to get better. He would prefer that I sit still in the middle while he walks. This is something we're developing where I can walk with him. And I think it's really important because he's got to get more comfortable with people, and you don't get better at it unless you practice it. So as long as we can stay under the threshold of fight and flight, this practice of walking together will lead to me being able to put a halter on and lead him places and take him places and do more with him. So Oriana says it's also part of feeling vulnerable, in my opinion. Letting go then is difficult. Yeah. Being vulnerable is dangerous. And so Atlas is going to protect himself from being vulnerable. When he mistakenly takes a deep breath and he starts to feel better, he's going to tense up really fast after that because that feeling better is too vulnerable. Now, what I've noticed is if I can stay consistent and we can walk for a couple of miles every day, he starts getting comfortable being vulnerable. He starts being willing to let down his guard, and he starts staying relaxed instead of tensing back up again. So it's only been a couple of days that I recommitted to walking with Atlas. Because he doesn't like it, I go through periods of time where I don't want to make him walk. Good sigh. Where I spend a lot of time just standing in the paddock with him and sharing space in ways that he can appreciate and not walking. But what I find is everything falls apart, and he gets more afraid, he gets more worried, he gets less willing to be vulnerable. And so, let's go. Even though he doesn't like this, if we can do a little bit every day, I find that he is much more willing to trust me. And that's really important. And we're going so slow. You can see how slow this feet go. I'm not putting any pressure on him unless he actually stops. And as you can see, he's starting to trust this a little bit. He's not feeling great yet. But yeah, absolutely, Donna. Humans can be this way too. You know, when you go to the hospital, they tell you to walk the hallways. You know, if you're going to recover from something physically, you have to get your body moving. And I feel like the emotional stuff is similar. So this is the thing I would have done differently with Atlas from the very beginning. I had my dreams that he would play with Ari and my two stallions would run around and they would help each other process things. And it didn't turn out. They don't want to live together. They're violent together. They hurt each other. They're not at an emotional, stable place where they can accept a friend that's that different from them. So as you can see, Atlas is yawning. That time he didn't get angry when he was done yawning, and that's improvement. And this is what I find, you know, this is as we're walking, he's processing the way he feels in his body. And as he processes, he's starting to get more comfortable being vulnerable. He's starting to get more comfortable trusting that I'm not going to hurt him. I don't know how much of his life he will need me to make him walk, but I have discovered if I don't make him walk, his life gets profoundly worse just from day to day living in the paddock. He's afraid, he falls down, he panics from stuff that I can't control. Because I can't control when a bird flies over his paddock. I can't control when the neighbor starts their chainsaw. I can't control when it's windy. I certainly can't control when the foghorns start blowing and he gets really upset. All of these things that I can't control that bother Atlas don't bother him if he's walking enough. And so I have to let go of some of my desire to always give him freedom of choice. and take away some of that freedom and say, for a little bit of time each day, and he needs to poop, so we're going to stop here. It's not like this is a death march. But for a little bit of time each day, he just has to keep walking. And then he's not so afraid of the world because he's had a chance to process all of that tension that gets stored in his muscles and his body. So I'm going to look at the comments here a little bit here. Yeah. Shardy, I have had Atlas for not quite 2 years now. The project was supposed to take a year. He absolutely changed that plan. He was nowhere close to being done with his rehabilitation process in 1 year. So we're going on close to 2 years now, and I think it'll be 2 years in September. And it was about a year before I could touch him. Now, if I had known he needed to move more in order to get brave, that might have been very different. And I wish I wasn't the one making him move. I wish I could set him up with the right horse friends and the right track system and the right pasture so that he could move from somebody else's motivation, not mine. But we have what we have. So Lillian says, often as I'm treating horses, I'll incorporate movement after releases to shift things quicker. So I agree, movement is massive for functional therapy. Yeah. And, it would be easier if I did a lot of food rewards. Food rewards would help motivate that. And I have added them in here and there. It's not my specialty. It's not really the thing I want to study, but food rewards can be a really good motivator. I have a huge respect for people who have track systems where they can spread the food out around the track and the horse goes from hay pile to hay pile to move a little bit more. I don't have a track system here that Atlas can be on, but it's something that I might build for him if this need of his goes on for a long time. Just going to see if I've missed other comments. Lillian says, I think it's really important what you're doing with him, with your movement of him, for his bigger good and quality of life. I'll pray he learns more self-soothing and to help himself with things you can't control. Yeah, it breaks my heart too that, I can't control his entire environment and he gets so upset if he's not actively processing every day. And this is something I wasn't prepared for. I've never met a horse that voluntarily wants to stand still for so much of every day. Atlas is a completely new, different project for me. So my arm's getting really tired. I'm going to go ahead and switch his direction so I can hold the camera the other way. Hi, bud. We're going to walk this way for a bit. So as you see, he's pretty easy to move around, but mostly that's because he's afraid of people being too close to him. If I do everything just right with exactly the right pattern, I can pet him on his neck now. We can even get some moments of enjoyment, but I have to have everything just right. And that's what I'm finding with horses that have PTSD or a lot of trauma in their background is, one, they need to move. They need to move and process it through their muscles in their body. And two, they really need consistency. They need to know what's going to happen next. And let's see what other comments I have. Rachel said, with more movement, does he become more fluid in his movement? No, he chooses to go this slowly. The only time I see him become more fluid in his movement is when he's in with the other stallion. And there's a lot of bravado and showing off between the two of them, and then he gets more fluid. There's a motivation there to posture and act like a stallion. So I just have to be very careful that that motivation doesn't turn into fear in a fight. Atlas is prone to attacking the other horses, both the geldings and the stallions. but he only attacks them if they ask him to move too much. So too much pressure and he will fight back. He's been very successful in his life in fighting back and having people get scared and go away. And I think the same is true of other horses. All of my horses are a little afraid of him because he doesn't give a lot of warning before he attacks. You think it's fine and then it's not. So, I'm hoping that as I learn how to do this, I can help him take whatever trauma it is that he has in his body and process it through his muscles. And then once he is more physically comfortable, then I can go back to my freedom-based training concepts where there's more choice, because choice is really important to me. But let me see, Shardy says the process may be slow, but I bet the outcome will be so much more trust. Thank you, Shardy. I'm really learning a lot and I love it. And I'm just learning to accept that, all of us know that feeling where you're angry or you're scared or you're anxious and you feel sick to your stomach or your shoulders are all tense or, you just feel physically ill. And I think that that's the problem that Atlas has, is he feels physically ill when he tries to interact with the world because it's scary for him. He's had a lot of bad experiences. And he also feels physically ill when he has to try and walk and process through it. But walking is the better option. So if we can get through it and he feels better physically, then we can start to give him more choices. Then we can start to really work in freedom. But I don't think we can really work in freedom until he starts to make good choices. So, let's see. Julie says, do you think he has pain in his body, Elsa? Yes, I do. He's not lame. He doesn't limp, but you can see there's so many scars. And you can see that when he's not walking a lot, he stands very awkwardly. So I see a lot less pain in his body when we have a regular practice of walking. When I don't feel like making him, it makes me sad. I don't want to do it. When I don't walk with him, he gets a lot more postures that look painful. He stands really awkwardly, and you can see the lumps and bumps and bruises from the past in all the swellings and weird places on his legs. Sorry, I went away there for a second. So I do think walking helps. I think walking helps with circulation. Walking helps with emotional processing. Walking helps with everything. It's not his choice. It's not what he'd want to do. This is not freedom-based training. It's not really what I want to study, but this is the horse I have. And I need to help him be comfortable just living day-to-day life. So Rachel says, do you feel his fear is connected to pain that he may have? Yes, but not direct acute pain. His pain is things like muscle spasms. When he gets really concerned, his muscles, he twitches and he flinches, and then his muscles start to spasm, and that would be pain. So his own reactions tend to cause him pain. The other day, he had a particularly bad meltdown. He ran into the barn wall. I was not close to him. It was because he was close to the other horse. He got scared of the other horse. He spun. He ran into the barn wall. He then galloped around the paddock. He then tripped. He then fell down. He then slid all the way down the hill on his side. Such an overdramatic response to the fact that the horse was standing in a place he didn't expect. And, this is the really difficult thing about trauma, is that the reactions or responses to things are not what you expect. And then the horses scare themselves with their own reactions. And they end up with a confirmation bias that indeed the world is out to hurt them. Now, all of that happened during a time I was not regularly walking with Atlas. I had paused in my walking routine. He wasn't getting the help of processing things. He was really overreactionary. I saw all that happen. I apologized to him, and we started a walking routine again. This is the thing that I would have done differently. This is the biggest thing, is he needs to move every day. He's not going to volunteer to move. And if he doesn't volunteer to move, he will scare himself with his own reactions and even cause himself pain. So this walking very slowly is his therapy. It's the thing that keeps him rational and sane and making proper responses. So, yeah, I would agree. Now, he does look dissociated. Front and back, they don't quite connect. Now, I will tell you, if you put him in the same paddock with the other stallion, all of a sudden he does connect. He's very connected. He's beautiful. He's athletic. He has skills you would not believe in terms of being quick and agile and athletic and beautiful. But it's not how he is every day. And that state seems to be very overwhelming for him. And it tends to send him into fight a little bit too quickly. So if he needs to walk, being disconnected for a little while, just to process things, then that's what we'll do for him. So, yeah, Julie, it only happened over time. The other horses weren't afraid of him at first, but one by one, he's caused sort of massive injuries with each one of them when I wasn't there to tell him to walk it off. And so this is the way I can manage him in company. If other horses start to push on him and I see that he's starting to get uncomfortable, I can say, you know what, Atlas, let's walk for a while. And he can work it out and then not attack anybody. But if I'm not there to say, Atlas, why don't you walk a little while, there's a fight. And so I am only able to keep him with the horses that are very, very careful not to push him, because he's a little bit unpredictable. So Kelly says, how would you know if it was permanent pain or trauma-related pain? I have no idea, Kelly. The way I choose to see it is we're going to do things that are healthy for him to the best of our ability. I don't know. I mean, if it's permanent pain, is it bad enough that you put a horse down? That's a really difficult decision. Is it something that you can work through? I don't know. We just take it a day at a time and say, can I make this better? And overall, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And I would say that overall, since Atlas has been here, it's better all the time. He looks more comfortable in his body all the time. So we're going to say it's an improving trend. Rachel says, curious what your aim is with Atlas. I'm filming a movie about the process with Atlas. My aim for Atlas is that he teach me as much as he can about helping horses with past trauma so that I can help other people. I have no need for Atlas to do anything for me other than live the best life he's possibly going to be able to live. So whatever that looks like for him, what's the happiest, healthiest horse Atlas can be, that's what we're aiming for. How we get there is my education. So yeah, Rachel, his job is to educate me so that I can help other people with horses that may have similar issues. So Kelly says, I only ask as my pony plus I have pain. Mine isn't all trauma. Yeah, pain is a really interesting subject, and that's sort of a subject for a whole other conversation, I think. My job is to work with the emotional stuff, but I'm realizing the physical stuff has to be addressed to the extent you can. I can't touch Atlas a whole lot, so it's not like I can get him a chiropractor or a massage therapist. It would be unsafe for a vet to treat him because he has a history of attacking people. So we are helping him to the best that we can, given who he is and what he will tolerate. So Lillian says, I love your flexibility to meet him where he's at. maybe an aspect of FBT, though you don't feel it is. Yeah, it doesn't feel like freedom to me at all, Lillian, but it is what he needs, and I'm willing to meet him where he's at and just do the best we can. Julie says, the way he moves reminds me of our older boy Joe, who has arthritic shoulders, probably other places too. He often, let's see if I can read the rest of this comment. Okay, I can't read the rest of your comment, Julie, so I'll go back and read it later. Lillian says, he just got no control over his responses. It's in a different place in his nervous system. Yeah, that's, but I feel like the more we have him process, the more we walk, the more he feels good in his body, there you go, the more he starts to get control of his responses. And he starts to be able to make good choices instead of just reacting. So this is what we do. Jennifer says, why just walking, no trotting or loping? We do a little bit of trotting and a little bit of loping at times. I try and keep it brief because I don't want to injure him. He has hooves that have never been trimmed, as far as I know. If they were trimmed, they were probably trimmed in a crush. Maybe he was flipped on his side to have him trimmed, but he's got some funky feet down there, and it's not a good base of support for running fast. So one of the reasons we walk is because we're on this sandy ground and we're wearing his feet down because I can't trim them. So until he has a better base of support, I think it's great if he wants to trot or canter, but I'm not going to make him trot or canter a lot because I don't want to cause more damage than good. So, yeah. Sandra says, do you treat him with an ongoing anti-inflammatory like MSM? Yes, I do have him on anti-inflammatories. It's one of the things I could do. I could not do it for the first year because he refused to eat anything but hay. It took me an entire year to convince him to eat something out of a pan. So there was nothing he would eat other than hay for the first year. That's how low his trust was. I fed other horses right next to him. He watched my warm blood eat grain and all sorts of treats, and he wouldn't even try it. So it took us a year to be able to get him on some anti-inflammatories. But he is now. He trusts a little bit more now. Let's see. Lillian says, have you seen the moments of connection you describe, the beautiful movement, increase in frequency or time, the more processing you do with him? At this point, I have to be honest. When he looks really beautiful and connected, it's when he feels most threatened. So it's not voluntary, it's under extreme pressure. And so I don't put him in those situations, or I try not to. I think that given his history, he needs more processing time in a low pressure way, not a high pressure way. Also, with that body, we don't want him stressing it too much because I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to get lame. I want him to slowly and quietly build strength, not overdo it in a show of power around the other horses. Do you think he would also attack a mare? Unfortunately, yes. It's something that's not talked about very much, but rape does happen in the horse world. Mares are forced when they shouldn't be. And having watched Atlas and his fighting techniques when he gets upset with the boy horses, he goes right for the neck and he gets that bite hold that stallions do when they're breeding a mare that's not cooperative. And so I do think that he would attack a mare for breeding rights. And he hasn't had the socialization he should have had as a young boy horse to be good with mares. So he's not going to go in with mares on my watch. I will socialize him as much as I can with the boys, but I'm not going to put a mare in a situation where there's the possibility for attack or any rape type situation. So, how old is he? He's going to be 9 or 10. We don't know exactly, but somewhere middle-aged. Lillian says, I'm learning so much from you and Atlas. He's actually helping horses I'm treating. Thank you for saving him. yeah, that is Atlas's job. He is teaching us a lot. He's the most extreme case I've ever met. I don't know what I'm doing a lot of the time. I make it up as I go. It either gets better or it gets worse. He is teaching me things about helping horses with trauma. And by the end of this, I'll have a lot more information to give other people. Most horses don't have this degree of trauma. So if I can help Atlas, then I can share it with you guys, and you can help horses that are not as severely upset as he is. That's the plan anyway. Yeah, he is superb. He's really a beautiful horse. Now it says, have you ever tried an energetic clearing of his traumatic memories? You know, Nath, I know a lot of people do that, and it could be at some point I'm ready to try it. I really like working with the tangible, physical stuff that you can see, because that's where I feel like I can get the most information that I can pass on to others in a really helpful way. Does energetic clearing help? Probably, but it's not tangible enough to touch and feel and smell and taste. So it's not my first plan. I would like to be able to learn things about the very physical, concrete solutions that are possible. And if I don't have any success with those, yeah, we might go for energy clearing and energy work and all of that. I believe in it. It's just not the thing I really want to study. So Atlas is helping me with the things I really want to study first. Donna says, what type of anti-inflammatory do you have him on? I'm going to message you about that. There's so many controversies about things you should feed and shouldn't feed. I'm going to let that be a private discussion between you and I, Donna. I'm not really sure I'm ready to get onto that platform publicly about what you should or should not be feeding. Wow, lots of comments, lots of questions today. Thank you. Sometimes I laugh, you know, my most popular work is often where I am frustrated and stumped and banging my head against a wall because I don't know what to do. And this horse has brought all of that out for me. It's the uncomfortable questions. It's the uncomfortable conversations. He makes all my other horses look so easy. And, you know, is it fair for me to ask him to work with me? Well, if he wasn't working with me, his life would be worse or he would be dead. This is his last stop. Nobody wants a 9-year-old stallion with a history of attacking people. No vet wants to treat him. Nobody wants to trim his feet. I want to trim his feet, but he won't let me yet. Nobody's going to walk for hours on end to help him wear those feet down. So I'm his last stop. Is it fair? Is he in too much pain to be asked to develop and process his past and learn to trust humans again? It's a valid question. And so far my answer is yes. I think it's fair. But I don't think it's fair to ask him to make all the choices. If I ask him to make all the choices about what's right for him, he becomes very unhealthy. And when he becomes unhealthy, he suffers more. So to some extent, I have to make the choices for him so that he's healthy enough to be physically comfortable before we work on emotional processing. So thank you, Lillian. I'm sure there's some energetic work going, you know, subconsciously, but it's not my main focus. And that's just because you get better at what you pay attention to. And I have some really concrete physical pieces I want to get better at. So Dot says, love what you're doing. They're with us for a reason. I think we're on a great learning curve. Time, indeed. So I'm going to go ahead and keep walking with Atlas until he takes a great big deep breath. And then I'll go ahead and invite him to come in and stand with me. We'll do stuff at the standstill that he's very, very comfortable with. And that will be our session. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys for spending tea time with me, even though I didn't have tea with me today. This is Atlas and Elsa, Tuesday Tea Time. If you guys want to know more about him, I post a video every week on Patreon about the progress of the projects I'm doing. He's one of the big ones. And I'm learning more all the time. So I will keep sharing it as I learn it. Got a couple more comments here. Emily says, it's like he's had so much choice taken away in the past. He needs help to make good choices now. Yeah, that could be very true, Emily. Maybe I'll find him the right horse friends at some point to help him make good choices. For now, I'll help him as best I can. Sandra says, what a task you have, what a journey. It seems like it's something that was meant to happen. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. I'm going to keep working on it. I like learning. I like being challenged. I like my brain to have a puzzle to work on, and this horse is more of a puzzle than I have ever had. Thank you, Julie. It is beautiful work, if I can have the patience to keep doing it, which I do. Hillier says, this has been so interesting. You have such patience. I don't know if I have patience so much as curiosity. I have enough curiosity to keep showing up every day and see what happens next. You're welcome, Florentine. Thank you guys for joining me. I've got one more. Kelly says, this has been so helpful to watch. Breaks my heart asking Lakota to move at times, so I really feel for you. What is it? Wow, long comment. Okay, I'm going to have to go ahead and read and answer your comment a little bit later. Thank you for leaving it, Kelly. I am going to say goodbye right now. My arm is super tired from holding my camera out as we walk. This is a lot harder than standing still. Hope you guys have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll be back next Tuesday with something more. Let me know if there's some specific subject you'd like me to talk about. All right, do you have anything else you want to say, Atlas? I'm good?